Hello everybody, how's it going? Today I decided for my video I was going to keep it very general, very simple. I was going to talk about the 5 major perspectives in psychology. I listed them here for you and we're going to go one by one. Hopefully this video will be a fundamental stepping stone for you guys and I can elaborate on each one in a minor level for today. But later on, in future presentations, I can go into detail with each one. I was going to start with the biological approach. So let's start off with number 1, biological approach. The biological approach in psychology, also known as biological psychology, is the study of how our brains, the way it's wired, affect our behavior. It really pinpoints to that, to the molecular level, all the way to the cellular level, all the way to molecular level. And it also, the field has shifted from it focusing on neurotransmitters. It's right here. Neurotransmitters. To neurological connections. If I were to use the biological approach with my clients, I would want to take an MRI of their brain or a CAT scan of their brain and see what parts of the brains are functioning, which parts of the brain are stable, why, which way it's wired, and then I would be able to explain their behavior like that. A lot of times this approach, it's been open over the last 20 years. Neuroscience has really taken the field to a whole nother level, to research to a whole nother level, and it's kind of left biological psychology, I don't want to say behind a little bit, but neuroscience has really taken over the field in that aspect. Okay? The next one is the psychodynamic approach, which I'm sure, as you know, let's go to this side actually. Freud. If I'm not mistaken, there's not that many psychodynamic or psychoanalytic schools for psychology in the world. I actually went to one in Austria a couple years ago. I was able to visit it. I was actually able to visit Freud's home. And the psychodynamic approach, as you guys know, focuses on the unconscious. And as you guys may know, I've never said this in my videos, but when it comes to sex, he really thought that our motivations stem from sex and our sexual urges. I'm not going to get too much into detail, although I love Freud. I love his how he termed the words unconscious and how sometimes we can do things without realizing it, and the real underlying motives for why we do things tend to cloak themselves from us. I love that. But it's definitely an approach that's not used too much in today's time, although we do use the unconscious concept, Freud, and that's right here, the term unconscious. We don't really try, and today's, a lot of the psychotherapists today, we don't really try and have someone lay down on the couch and tell me how their dream was and try associating objects with the dream and what it represents. That's an old school. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying psychology as a whole has evolved. Since Freud, okay. Since Freud, the behavioral approach has been utilized. B.F. Skinner was the first one for the behavioral approach, along with Watson. And he believed that we did not have free will. He believed that, so let's put here consequences. Consequences, let's put a line like that. And by consequences, he means reinforcements, plus punishments. I'll give you an example. The behavioral approach, I tend to use it a lot in my practice. So when I have clients that they stay at the residential treatment facility, when they do good things, or if you're a parent and your child does something good, you're going to reward them with a toy, you're going to reward them with a nice cell phone, you're going to reward them somehow, some way. You might even take them out to eat if they do something good. But if they do something that's not so good, or something that's contrary to what your belief system they should be doing, then you're going to give them a punishment. Or you might not reward them with praise. By the way, guys, praise is the most powerful reinforcer that you can use, especially if you're a boss or in a leadership position. Praise, especially not only praise from the individual, but when the individual praises you in front of a group of people, we tend to value that. And I guess we can go to Freud and say that happens at an unconscious level, huh? Anyway, so that's the behavioral approach. It uses consequences, reinforcements, and punishments, and it does get used in treatment today. Let's take a look at autism or developmental disorders. For developmental disorders here in Florida, in the United States, we tend to use ABA, the practice of ABA, applied behavioral analysis. That's a behavioral approach. And that's an approach where we try and use reinforcements to promote the behaviors that we want, especially praise included. And we try and limit maladaptive behaviors. So let's go on to the fourth one. And like I said, guys, if you guys want more information on each one, you guys can message me and I'll try and do a video elaborating on the specific type that you guys are talking about. So, cognitive approach. Here we focus on schemas, and we try understanding, unlike behavioral, which behavioral takes the position of your behaviors dictate your emotions and your cognitive process. Here, in a cognitive approach, your thoughts will influence your behavior and your emotions. So in this one, we tend to focus on schemas, and a pioneer in the field of cognitive approach is Jean Piaget. Jean Piaget, let's put it like that. Piaget, as my professor says. And here we'll focus on schemas, and we'll try and understand the way an individual thinks. And sometimes we'll use, and within the cognitive approach, are reality approach, which is a reality therapy where you confront the client in the types of schemas that he's engaging. You'll target the client's belief system and the discrepancy between what they're saying and what they're doing, and what they believe and what their actions are. You'll try also and just maybe even take an empathetic approach and just understand their way of being as a whole, their way of thinking as a whole, so then you can maybe help the client produce what they want. But you have to be a very skilled clinician, and this takes a deliberate practice in your approach. Okay, you have to be deliberate in what you're trying to do. It's very easy for clinicians nowadays to throw out CBT, cognitive therapy, cognitive approach, cognitive behavioral approach, but it takes an experienced clinician to know what each of those terms mean and what their implications are in therapy. And the last one, humanistic approach. We'll use here client-centered. Or we can also use, aside from client-centered, we can also put here, let's put Carl Rogers. This approach, sorry guys, my handwriting's a little off. This approach is a little different than the other ones. This approach tends to view the client as a whole. It tends to take an empathetic approach to the client or a person. If a person's telling you a story about what happened in their day, you don't try and point out flaws in what they're saying and what they did during the day. What you try and do is you try and understand them as a whole, and you understand where they're coming from. And you try and take an understanding from where they're at that moment. Rather than the behavioral approach, there isn't so much chit-chatting. It's just the consequences speak for themselves. Or in the biological approach, it's the way your brain's wired. It's not really you. We can also put up here, just for giggles, in the humanistic approach, I put client-centered, but Carl Rogers termed it as person-centered. Something I want to go back to real quick is in the biological approach. I don't know what you all get taught in your school, but the mind versus body. And the biological approach tries to determine the difference between mind and body. The mind and brain. Not body, mind and brain. The brain is the actual physical organ. And obviously it's the most powerful organ in the body, because without it we wouldn't be able to function. But the brain is an actual organ, and the way it's wired, the way it's constructed, is why we do things. But the mind has a psyche of its own. It's like my professor says, we're more than just neurotransmitters and neurological connections, and that's the mind. Anyways, I hope this suits you well. I don't know which one. I'll probably do the biological approach next week, and hopefully I can do a more intense video on what each one really represents and really get into the thick of things of how a neuron actually operates with the dendrites and the axons. Tell me what you guys think, okay? Don't forget to comment. Feedback would be lovely, and I can't wait to do my next video. See you guys. Psych Life.